If you're a horror movie fan, you're likely no stranger to the thrill of watching a film that's based on a true story. But how much of what you're seeing is actually true? Um, um, as it turns out, many of these movies take creative liberties with the facts. And so let's take a look at some of the most popular horror movies that are supposedly based on real events, but aren't entirely true. Before we dive in, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Now, let's get started. Have you ever wondered what makes a horror movie truly terrifying? Is it the creepy atmosphere, the jump scares, or the fact that it's based on a true story? For many of us, it's the latter that really gets our hearts racing. But how often do these true story horror movies actually stick to the facts? Let's take a look at The Exorcist, for example. This classic horror movie tells the story of a young girl possessed by a demon and the two priests who try to exorcise it. While the movie is based on a true story, it takes some significant creative liberties. The real life inspiration for the movie was a boy named Roland Doe, who was allegedly possessed by a demon in the 1940s. However, the movie changes the gender of the main character and amplifies many of the supernatural elements. Another example is the Amityville horror. This movie tells the story of a family who moves in to a haunted house in Amityville, Long Island. While the movie is based on a true story, many of the events depicted in the film are disputed. The Lutz family, who lived in the house, claim to have experienced all sorts of paranormal activity, but many have questioned the validity of their claims. The Strangers is another movie that claims to be based on a true story. The film tells the story of a young couple who are terrorized by three masked strangers in their remote vacation home. Uh, However, the movie's director has admitted that the film is not based on a specific true story, but rather on a series of unrelated events. The Conjuring series is another example of horror movies that claim to be based on true stories. The movies are based on the real life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who investigated a number of high profile cases, including the Amityville haunting. Uh, However, the movies take some significant creative liberties with the facts. Um, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another classic horror movie that claims to be based on a true story. Uh, the film tells the story of a group of friends who are stalked and killed by a family of cannibals in rural Texas. Um, while the movie is loosely based on the true story of Ed Gein, a serial killer who wore a mask made of human skin, many of the events depicted in the film are entirely fictional. The Devil Inside is another found footage horror movie that claims to be based on a true story. The film tells the story of a woman who documents her mother's supposed possession by a demon. However, the movie's marketing campaign was widely criticized for being misleading, and the film's portrayal of the events is largely fictional. Wolf Creek is another movie that claims to be based on a true story. Um, the film tells the story of a group of backpackers who are stalked and killed by a serial killer in the Australian outback. While the movie is loosely based on a series of real life murders, many of the events depicted in the film are entirely fictional. Open Water is another movie that claims to be based on a true story. Um, the film tells the story of a couple who are stranded in the ocean with a great white shark. Uh, um, while the movie is based on a true story, many of the events depicted in the film are fictionalized coca. Um, Annabelle is another movie that claims to be based on a true story. The film tells the story of a couple who are terrorized by a haunted doll. While the movie is based on a true story, many of the events depicted in the film are, you know, entirely fictional. Um, Finally, there's the Blair Witch Project. Um, this found footage horror movie tells the story of three students who venture into the woods to document a legendary witch. Uh, while the movie's marketing campaign claimed that the film was based on real events, uh, it's largely a work of fiction. In conclusion, while these horror movies may claim to be based on true stories, they often take significant creative uh, liberties with the facts. So the next time you're watching a horror movie that claims to be based on a true story, remember to take it with a grain of salt. And if you're feeling brave, you can always look up the real story behind the movie to see how it compares. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.